I, 32F, am an ER doctor at a major hospital in Boston. A few weeks ago, I gave birth to my daughter, and 2 days ago, I hosted her christening ceremony. My mom, 58F, is now furious that I didn't choose her as a godparent or even invite her to the ceremony. I want to explain the complicated situation that led to this decision. I became a single mother by choice after my relationship with my ex, 34M, a cardiologist at our hospital, ended during my pregnancy. We met during our residency and had what I thought was a solid relationship, dating for 3 years and living together for 2. When I discovered I was pregnant, I naturally brought up marriage. Given our stable careers and long-term relationship, I didn't think it was an unreasonable suggestion. However, he said he needed more time to think about whether he was ready for marriage. At that point in my life, particularly with my demanding career in emergency medicine, I knew I couldn't keep waiting for him to decide if he was ready for commitment. I gave him an ultimatum: either propose or we're done. As an ER doctor, I'm used to making quick, decisive choices, and I was completely prepared to be a single mother. To be honest, I knew we would break up even before giving him that ultimatum. After all, what successful marriage starts with an ultimatum? He moved out within weeks, proving my instincts right. Initially, he maintained that he was willing to be involved as a father, but after our breakup, he changed his mind and decided he wasn't ready for fatherhood either. I consulted with my colleagues in legal medicine, got a lawyer involved, and now he's paying child support. I have full custody, and while he can visit whenever he wants, he hasn't shown any interest so far. His exact words were, "I need to focus on my cardiology fellowship right now." As if I wasn't juggling my own medical career with pregnancy. The real issue, though, isn't about my ex. It's about my mother's behavior throughout this entire situation. When my relationship ended at the beginning of my pregnancy, I was in a really dark place mentally. As medical professionals, we're trained to recognize signs of depression, and I knew I needed support. My colleagues noticed too, especially during those long overnight shifts in the ER. Normally, families would step up in situations like this, but the only people who truly supported me were my friends. My 2 best friends from residency, Maria, 32F, another ER doctor, and Kelly, 31F, a pediatrician, visited me as often as possible while juggling their own medical practices. They were the only ones by my side when I went into labor, which is why I naturally chose them as my daughter's godmothers. The decision to exclude my mother wasn't made lightly. Throughout my pregnancy, I had been living alone in my condo near the hospital, taking extra shifts in the ER to save money for maternity leave. It wasn't easy working 12-hour shifts while pregnant, dealing with trauma cases and the physical demands of emergency medicine. My friends had offered to stay with me as I got closer to my due date, but I couldn't accept their offer since Maria is married with a 3-year-old son, and Kelly's hospital is quite far from mine. Like a fool, I had been counting on my mother. She had suddenly become more involved in my life after learning about my pregnancy on social media. Before that, we weren't particularly close because she always favored my younger sister Lisa, 25F. Our family dynamics were clearly divided. Lisa and Mom were one unit, while Dad and I were another. After we moved out for college, our family would only get together for holidays or birthdays, but at least we stayed in touch. Everything changed when my dad passed away from a sudden heart attack 2 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was working in the ER that night, though at a different hospital. After his funeral, the already tenuous relationship with my mother and sister practically dissolved. Lisa and my mom remained inseparable, frequently spending time together, but whenever I met them, there was an invisible wall between us. With time, I accepted that Lisa was more important to my mom. What struck me as odd was how my mother's behavior completely changed after my pregnancy announcement. She started making efforts to keep in touch, would even visit occasionally, and kept talking about how excited she was to be a grandmother. During the last few weeks of my pregnancy, when I was struggling with severe back pain after particularly tough shifts in the ER, I called her and asked her to stay with me. She promised she would, but at the very last moment, she canceled, claiming there had been numerous thefts in her neighborhood, and she didn't feel safe leaving her house unattended. I didn't know if she was telling the truth, but I was deeply disappointed. Still, I didn't pursue the matter and tried to manage on my own. However, when I went into labor during my night shift at the hospital, my mother was the first person I called. I told her I needed her there with me, but initially, she said it wouldn't be possible because she was busy. It was 2 a.m. on a Sunday, so I couldn't understand what kind of commitments she could possibly have. When I pressed her, growing increasingly distressed between contractions, she finally admitted she couldn't be there because she had to be there for Lisa. Apparently, Lisa had moved in with her a couple of weeks ago, which explained why she couldn't stay with me during my final weeks of pregnancy. My mother explained that Lisa had been dumped by her boyfriend recently and was in a very fragile state of mind, so being there for her was the top priority. I literally couldn't comprehend how anything could be more important than being present for the birth of your grandchild, but I was in too much pain to argue. After she explained her reason, I hung up and called Maria and Kelly instead. Maria arrived within 15 minutes, handled all the medical paperwork since she works at my hospital, and Kelly showed up directly at the delivery room. They stayed with me throughout the entire process and even helped me settle in for the next few days until I was comfortable being on my own with the baby. My mother, on the other hand, waited an entire week after my baby was born before contacting me. She texted asking if she could visit that day, acting completely casual as if nothing had happened. Her message read, "Hi sweetie, thought I'd stop by today to see my granddaughter. What time works?" That really rubbed me the wrong way, so I didn't respond. When she showed up unannounced that evening anyway, I pretended I wasn't home until she finally left. She tried calling me several times after that and kept texting, but I never replied. What's remarkable is that she never felt the need to apologize or even acknowledge what had happened. She kept pretending everything was fine, sending messages like "missing my grandbaby" and "can't wait to babysit." After a while, I guess she realized I was upset with her. However, instead of apologizing directly, she got Lisa to text me and try to defend her actions. This only made the situation worse because Lisa's message started with, "I'm really sorry that because of me, Mom couldn't be there when you went into labor, but you need to understand what I was going through." She proceeded to explain that she had been dumped by someone she had loved for a really long time, after dating him for only 2 weeks. Apparently, she had this crush on a guy from her college days, and back then, he had a girlfriend, so she never made a move. She kept in touch with him, stayed friends, and continued pining for him even after graduation. Recently, that guy and his girlfriend broke up, and within 3 weeks, he asked Lisa out. They dated for 2 whole weeks before he told her he just wanted to stay friends because he wasn't ready for another serious relationship so soon after ending his long-term relationship. This didn't sit well with Lisa, and she started arguing with him, which ended with him blocking her everywhere and calling her crazy and psychotic for taking a casual rebound so seriously. Under normal circumstances, I might have felt bad for her. But Lisa is 25 years old, not some teenager experiencing her first heartbreak. She should have realized he was just using her as a rebound. What makes it worse is that her friends had specifically warned her not to pursue him, knowing he had just gotten out of a serious relationship. I couldn't bring myself to sympathize with her, and I was furious that because she couldn't handle breaking up with a guy she dated for 2 weeks, our mother had decided to skip the birth of her granddaughter. This was after pretending to be excited about the baby for 9 entire months. Lisa's message just made everything worse because it showed me how both of them still couldn't see anything wrong with their behavior. I blocked both of them on everything, phone, social media, even email. They didn't make any further attempts to contact me through other means for about a week. Then came the christening ceremony at the church our family has been part of for generations. It was a small, private ceremony with just a few colleagues from the hospital, including Maria and Kelly as godmothers, and my aunt who I'm close to. I know for certain that none of these people told my mom about the ceremony, but somehow she found out anyway. I suspect one of the women from the choir must have told her since she knows them from her years of volunteer work at the church. I don't know who it was, but I'm planning to report them to the church administration because their gossip was completely unnecessary and has caused significant drama. The day after the christening, after she found out, my mom showed up at my condo. I was trying to get my daughter to sleep after a particularly fussy morning, and even though I pretended I wasn't home, my mom refused to leave. She just kept ringing the doorbell over and over again. After half an hour of this, With my daughter getting more agitated by the minute, I finally opened the door to confront her. She immediately started berating me about not being invited to the christening and not being named godmother. When I told her I had already made my decision and there was nothing she could do to change it, we had a heated argument. She tried to explain that she was only trying to be there for Lisa because obviously she was going through something terrible. My mother's exact words were, "At least you had your doctor friends by your side," but Lisa couldn't even share her issues with her friends because they had specifically warned her not to date that guy. She only had me to talk to, and she was doing really badly. That's why she moved in with me, she couldn't bear to be alone. As the older sister, you should have been more understanding instead of being so heartless and self-centered. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her I had zero sympathy for Lisa because she had brought this entirely upon herself, and I had even less sympathy for my mother because she had made her choice when she refused to be there for me during labor. Not to mention backing out of her promise to help during my final weeks of pregnancy. Before the argument could escalate further, I heard my daughter starting to cry inside. I told my mother that I had to take care of my baby and couldn't waste my time arguing over her poor choices. I closed the door in her face and told her to leave before I called security. She eventually left, but that wasn't the end of it. I've since heard from several of my colleagues at the hospital that my mother has been posting about me on social media, calling me evil and self-centered. While I've blocked her, I've seen the screenshots others have sent me. In one post, she wrote, "I've done everything in my power to be a good mother to both my daughters, but I guess some people just can't see that I can't be everywhere at once. I chose to be there for the daughter who had no one else, and now I'm being punished by being excluded from my granddaughter's life." In another post, she wrote, "My heart breaks for Lisa, who still hopes her sister will understand what she was going through. Lisa feels guilty about being the reason I missed my first grandchild's birth, but she's not the problem. I wish some people weren't so blinded by their ego and narcissism that they can't even understand their sister's pain." The most recent one really got to me. Karma always comes back around. We'll see how you feel when you're a mother going through this yourself. I'll forgive you for everything because a child can be selfish, but a mother can't be. Several relatives have reached out, suggesting that I should just talk to Lisa and Mom and try to understand their side. Some of my extended family members have even started sharing my mother's posts and adding their own comments about how I'm tearing the family apart. While I don't feel like I've done anything wrong, I want to get an outside perspective. I know pregnancy and new motherhood can make you more emotional and irritable, and the stress of being back at work in the ER while caring for a newborn isn't helping. But I can't help feeling that my mother made her choice clear when she prioritized my sister's 2-week relationship drama over the birth of her grandchild. As doctors, we're trained to make difficult decisions every day, and sometimes those decisions mean choosing between competing priorities. My mother also made her choice that night, and now she has to live with the consequences. I've chosen to prioritize creating a stable, drama-free environment for my daughter, surrounded by people who have proven they'll actually be there when we need them. Update 1, I've thought long and hard about this situation from every possible angle. After my last post and the subsequent events, I want to clarify my perspective and share how things have developed. Since my original post, my mother has escalated her social media campaign. I want to share the exact posts she's made, since some of you asked to see what was being said. Her first post read, "I've done everything in my power to be a good mother to both my daughters, but I guess some people just can't understand that I can't be everywhere at once. So I chose to be there for the daughter who had no one else by her side while she was dealing with the worst kind of heartbreak. I guess that makes me the biggest villain in the world, but what does that make the daughter who cut me out of her life over something so small and petty, and didn't even allow me to be part of my granddaughter's christening? Heartless would be the word." The second post, just a few hours after the first, "My heart aches for Lisa even after everything that's happened. She still holds out hope that maybe my other daughter will cut her some slack and try to understand what she was going through. But I know it's pointless. Lisa doesn't want to be the reason why I never got to be the godmother to my first granddaughter, and I know she's not the problem. I just wish I could get her to see that and stop blaming herself for whatever has happened. I also wish that some people would stop being so blinded by their ego and narcissism that they can't even understand their sister's pain." The most recent one was yesterday. Karma always strikes back. I'll see you when you as a mother go through this, and I'll forgive you for everything because a child can be selfish, but a mother can't. Along with these major posts, she's been sharing countless sad quotes about how difficult it is to be a mother. And to anyone who reaches out to her personally asking what's going on, she's taken great pains to explain all the drama in detail and make me look like the villain. As an emergency physician, I deal with real crises every day. When my mother and relatives try to paint my sister's 2-week relationship drama as some kind of massive crisis that justified missing the birth of her grandchild, I find it not just offensive but almost comical. Several of my aunts and uncles have been messaging me constantly, telling me I'm being unnecessarily cruel to my mother and sister. One aunt even suggested that my stubbornness might be due to postpartum depression and that I should seek help before I damage my relationship with my family permanently. I've also received messages from extended family members I haven't spoken to in years, all suddenly experts on my family dynamics. They keep bringing up how my mother was there for me during my pregnancy, conveniently forgetting that her support consisted mainly of social media comments and occasional visits when it was convenient for her. After reading through all their messages and seeing my mother's posts, I've become even more certain of my decision. My mother made her choice that night. She prioritized my sister's romantic disappointment over her daughter going into labor. She can try to rewrite the narrative all she wants, but the facts remain the same. I won't engage in their social media drama. I'm not going to post my side of the story or try to defend myself to relatives who have already made up their minds. My focus needs to be on my daughter and my career. I have 12-hour shifts in the ER to manage while taking care of a newborn. I don't have time or energy for people who only want to create more stress in my life. Maria and Kelly have been incredible throughout all of this. They've been taking turns checking in on us, bringing meals, and even offering to watch the baby when I need to rest between shifts. These are the kind of people I want in my daughter's life, people who show up when it matters, not just when it's convenient. So no, I don't think I'm being heartless or cruel. I'm being realistic about who I can count on and who I can't. My mother made her decision, and I've made mine. Update 2. About a week has passed since my last post, and things have escalated significantly. Now that I haven't responded to any of my mother's social media posts, I guess she realized she wasn't getting the reaction she wanted from her online drama campaign. This morning, she decided to pay me another visit, but this time, she brought Lisa with her. I was at home trying to get my daughter to nap after a particularly long night shift at the ER when they showed up unannounced. Through the door, they said they wanted to apologize, but I was in no mood for another confrontation. I knew that even if I opened the door and they apologized, they would eventually want to clear the air, which would mean rehashing everything that had happened. I didn't have the emotional or physical energy for that. I told them through the door that I was busy with my daughter and had just put her down for a nap. I explained that I wasn't in the right state of mind for a conversation right now, and if they genuinely wanted to apologize, they would have to do it later when I was actually free to talk. I tried to be as polite as possible, knowing that if I was rude, they might start yelling and wake my daughter. But I shouldn't have bothered trying to keep things civil because they started yelling anyway. They began berating me about how disrespectful I was being because they had driven all the way here, and I had refused to even open the door to let them in. For the record, I hadn't asked them to do any of that. My mother started shouting about how I was tearing the family apart, and how I was using my daughter as a weapon against her. Lisa chimed in with how I was being selfish and dramatic about the whole situation. They kept getting louder and louder, completely disregarding the fact that there was a sleeping baby inside. When I heard my daughter starting to stir and fuss through the baby monitor, something in me snapped. I opened the door and told them in no uncertain terms that if they didn't get off my property right that instant, I would call the police and file for a restraining order. They looked shocked, probably because they hadn't expected me to fight back. My mother tried to argue, saying I was overreacting, and that she had rights as a grandmother. But Lisa, at least, seemed to understand that I was serious about my threat and wasn't just saying it for intimidation. She started trying to pull our mother away. Even as she was being dragged away, my mother didn't stop. She kept cursing at me, calling me names, and saying things like, "You'll regret this when you need my help," and "You can't keep my granddaughter from me forever." Lisa, while pulling her away, was also muttering about how I was always like this, and how I never could handle things like a normal person. I didn't call the police this time because I didn't want to take such a drastic step. But I've decided that if they show up again, I won't hesitate. This isn't just about me anymore, their behavior is now affecting my daughter. When I went back inside, she was fully awake and crying from all the commotion. I've already notified my building's security about the incident and given them my mother and sister's descriptions. I've also documented everything that happened today, including the time and what was said, in case I do need to pursue legal action in the future. At this point, I wouldn't put it past my mother to try something else. To be clear, I'm not preventing them from seeing my daughter because I'm being petty about what happened during my labor. I'm keeping them away because they've consistently shown that they don't respect boundaries and will prioritize their own feelings over my daughter's well-being. Today was just the latest example of that. At least their behavior made one thing crystal clear: I'm definitely not like my mother, because while she might not really care about me, I will do whatever it takes to protect my child from toxic behavior, even if that means cutting off family. Update 3, I know I've been missing in action for almost 2 months now since my last post, but I've been incredibly busy with work and my daughter. Life has actually been going pretty well for us. Maria and Kelly drop by frequently to spend time with my daughter, and I haven't had any direct contact with my mom or Lisa in several weeks. Lisa did keep trying to reach out to me for a few weeks following the last incident. She created multiple new social media accounts after I blocked her original one, sending messages explaining that even though she had sided with our mom during the confrontation, our mother was really upset about everything that had gone wrong. According to Lisa, because of mom's age, she was too prideful to admit she was wrong, so Lisa wanted me to somehow make the first move toward reconciliation so mom could rebuild a relationship with her granddaughter. I didn't respond to any of her messages, no matter how many she sent. Eventually, I guess she got tired of creating new accounts and stopped trying altogether. I'm genuinely grateful that she did because I've made my position clear: if my mother wants me to consider forgiving her, she needs to apologize first. Then, maybe, I'll consider giving her the opportunity to be a grandmother. But for now, I'm completely content with my life as it is. My schedule at the hospital has settled into a manageable routine. I've been lucky enough to switch to more regular day shifts, which has made caring for my daughter much easier. My colleagues have been incredibly supportive, especially those who are parents themselves. They understand the challenges of balancing medical career demands with single parenthood. Maria and Kelly have become even more involved in our lives. Maria's 3-year-old son has basically appointed himself my daughter's big brother, and it's adorable to watch them interact during our weekend get-togethers. Kelly has been incredible about coordinating her pediatric clinic schedule to handle all my daughter's checkups and vaccinations personally. The contrast between their consistent support and my mother's behavior couldn't be more stark. While my friends have naturally integrated themselves into our daily lives, my mother and sister seem to think that dramatic gestures and emotional manipulation are the way to build relationships. They still don't understand that trust is earned through reliable, consistent behavior, not grand shows of emotion when it's convenient for them. Some of our relatives have finally started to back off as well. I think they've realized that I'm serious about maintaining these boundaries. A few have even reached out to apologize for getting involved in the situation without understanding the full context. One of my aunts, who initially sided with my mother, recently admitted that she's noticed similar patterns of behavior from mom in other family situations. My daughter is thriving in our peaceful environment. She's hitting all her developmental milestones right on schedule, and Kelly assures me she's perfectly healthy. The stability of our current routine seems to suit her well. We have a solid support system in place with my friends and colleagues, and I've found that I don't miss the drama that my mother and sister brought into our lives. Sometimes I wonder if my mother realizes that she's missing out on watching her granddaughter grow up, not because I'm being vindictive, but because she couldn't prioritize her daughter's needs during one of the most critical moments in life. She chose to focus on Lisa's minor romantic disappointment over being present for the birth of her grandchild, and that decision revealed everything about her priorities. The irony isn't lost on me that while my mother claims I'm using my daughter as a weapon, she's the one who tried to use my pregnancy and her role as a grandmother to repair our relationship, but only on her terms. She wanted all the privileges of being a grandmother without any of the actual support or responsibility that role entails. I've learned a lot about motherhood in these past few months, and one thing has become crystal clear: being a mother means showing up when your child needs you, not just when it's convenient or when you want something. My mother's actions during my pregnancy and labor showed me exactly what kind of grandmother she would be, someone who would always prioritize her own needs and Lisa's drama over my daughter's well-being. For now, I'm focusing on building the kind of stable, loving environment that I want my daughter to grow up in. We're surrounded by people who have consistently proven their loyalty and support. My daughter might have fewer biological family members in her life, but she has something more valuable: adults who can be counted on to put her needs first. The door isn't permanently closed. If my mother ever genuinely acknowledges her behavior and offers a sincere apology, I would consider carefully reintegrating her into our lives. But I won't hold my breath waiting for that to happen, and I won't compromise on my daughter's emotional well-being in the meantime. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for your child is to protect them from toxic family dynamics, even if that means keeping distance from your own mother.